Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. Joining me is Brian, and I don't know if anyone else will be joining us today, but hey, I guess what it amounts to is this. The Browns are winning, so maybe interest is less. And it is funny. The post-game show drops every time the Browns do something decent, which hasn't been very much, very often. But no. But when they're that 0-16 season, we had 1,500 people watching this nonsense. Honestly, I mean, which for me, and I don't do anything to promote the program. It's like this is just a fling of mine, something that I do just for the hell of it. But now they're winning.
They're waiting for another Stevie Wonder moment.
Yeah, you see, they want to see me like this guy when he's ranting, man. This is when we want to see him, is when he's ranting. And now, nothing to rant about this season. Well, you can if you want to find it, but I'm not your guy. Today we're going to be doing the Browns pregame analysis, and we're going to be also talking about predictions in the game, and along with a few other things that are of interest. I love to start out with the Browns because that is the ticket, and I don't want to go the whole show on this because there are a couple of other things that I think are interesting stories that, I guess maybe it's because it's my fucking show. And if you had to endure what I've had to endure for 16 years doing this thing, you'd feel the same way. The Cleveland Browns are in the best position they can possibly be in. I mean, if you would have said to me after 4 weeks, what would be like your dream come true, I'd say 2-2. And then they would say, but we were 2-2 last year. But it's like different. It's different. Because you have to see how the 2-2 plays out, I would say 1-3, if we lost the first 3, but we got stronger each time, that would be not real happy. But, it's like, well, this is kind of what happens when you flip-flop around with the pandemic,
But if you flip the record around, that's basically what's happened.
Yeah, and but the fact that we are, and if you look at the teams that are by and large doing well, they are teams that have established systems, established quarterbacks, established front lines, established personnel, depth. Those teams will fare better than teams that have just, handed the reins over to a new quarterback. And, kudos to the Bengals, by the way, who got their first win. I mean, they're not a horrible 1-3 by any stretch of the imagination, having been in the games that they've lost and winning their last game, and Joe Burrow throwing for 300 yards in 3 consecutive games, which is really, really good.
They are very reminiscent of the 2018 Browns.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know.
You get the tie against Pittsburgh, and then you get a couple of weird losses, and then all of a sudden they kind of take off for a little bit, and then they ended the season 7-8-1.
Well, you got to say this: AJ Green's not been a factor, and the Bengals are still putting up yardage. And Mixon had a big game, 165 yards in their last game, so maybe their running game is starting to get off the ground.
He single-handedly won the fantasy league for me. Sorry,
Rick. Yeah. So, but the Browns are in the best position they can be in, and let me explain it, because the name of the show is Why the Browns Have Arrived. And it's like, what have they arrived at, Mr. Moohead? And the answer is respectability. And I've always said you got to crawl before you can walk. And respectability is something that the Browns went from being an absolute joke to kind of catching fire, like you just said, for a short period of time, and then kind of receding back into the quagmire. And same old Browns. By the end of the year, same old Browns. That's a lack of respect when your opponents do not respect you. And as far as I'm concerned, this team is respectable. They can go out on the field, and with the exception of those few select teams that they can't yet compete with because of personnel. I mean, depth, talent defensively. They could win any game they play. We're in this, and we're playing a team this week that is an absolute perfect opponent from the standpoint that it's another team that's in the middle of this, as far as they're not elite, all right, but at the same time, they may not be elite, but they're not one of the bozo teams by any stretch of the imagination. They are,
and they're kind of vice versa from the Browns, where the Browns have a much stronger offense than defense.
Right.
The Colts are a much stronger defense than offense.
They're both incomplete teams, and that is what happens when you're relying on a 39-year-old starting quarterback, or you're relying on second and third string safeties and defensive secondary people. That's what happens. And so they're both incomplete teams, but they're both overachieving in a way that, in a preseason sense, nobody really expected. For us, coming out in the whole new system, and for Frank Reich over at Indianapolis to have to kind of change the game plan completely, because he's got Phillip Rivers now. He doesn't have luck throwing the football. I don't mean luck as in fortune. I mean
Andrew.
Yes, correct. And, so it's not as wide open. So as he's playing it closer to the vest. And the adjustments that both of these head coaches have made in order to make them work with the personnel that they have. Both men have done a tremendous job. This is, again, what Brian was just saying. This is the strength of the team. And, and they have a quarterback who is very Nick Foles-esque. All right. And we'll talk about that in a little bit too. But somebody who can control the ball, throw for high percentages, and in a good, solid scheme, get rid of the ball quickly. And I guess in the end, that's all you really want. That's all you really need. Hold on to the ball as long as you can. Hi, Bronk. How you doing? And so this is definitely an out. Darius Leonard, the linebacker, out with a groin injury, but that's not going to stop that run defense one bit. It's a shame. We keep getting hammered.
Their D-line does an excellent job of filling gaps.
Yeah, and we have the typical problems. Carl Joseph now added to the injury report. Do we know anything more? Hamstring injury. So that was in yesterday's practice.
Did not practice today either.
So, I mean, basically, we're talking about
Harrison would replace him at free safety.
Yeah, and and this is not the natural position for Ronnie Harrison. All right, he's a strong safety by trade, and I don't know what all this is going to mean. We know that Ogunjobi's not going to play; he's out. All right, and so that's not good news for the Browns. They're going to try.
Elliott, number 91, is supposed to replace him in the lineup.
Yes, he's going to be the guy who takes his place. Now, as far as other positions on the field, Kareem Hunt's full go, but you never know. The lingering groin injury can hang over our heads, and one wrong cut can, as Denzel Ward found out, that can set you back. So the Browns have had problems in their backfield all year. is going to force Sendejo to continue to play every down, which I thought it was interesting that the defensive coordinator came to Sendejo's rescue. Now we know who likes him anyway, because it sure as hell isn't me. He said that the busted coverage was a bust not on Sendejo, but that somebody was supposed to come across and help. And
well,
that
the only other safety was Joseph, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying what he said, and is it well, what does it mean? It's the fact that Woods felt the need to step up for Sendejo tells you that it's a source of conversation, okay, in the Browns locker room. Joseph, you can add him to Adrian Claiborne being questionable, ruled out Ogunjobi and Greedy Williams, who still just can't get on the field, and Tay Davis also ruled out for the second straight week. Jordan Elliott will start, as you've just stated. Williams will be replaced for the fifth straight game by Terrence Mitchell. He's not ready yet, Williams, to come back. We're hopeful that we'll have some good news in the next couple of weeks. It's like, well, you might as well just end the fucking season. David Njoku is okay. He'll be active, but why? The only thing I can see in this is that maybe the one opportunity that Rashard Higgins would have to play, Njoku just, you're going to put an extra tight end out there and use him as a height wide receiver. I have a feeling that's where this might go. That Njoku, they might use the Chief just to go up after the ball rather than putting a third receiver, wide receiver on the field. I don't know. But right now, Hooper and Harrison Bryant have been doing well. And it isn't like Njoku is going to step in for either of these two players who seem to be getting more and more comfortable with the system.
No, Njoku would probably be taking the Carlson reps as the third string tight end.
I would not be surprised if we have him out in patterns and you're going to see Rashard Higgins inactive again. You have nobody. I mean, if you want to run fake reverses and things like that, you can do it, I suppose. I don't know why you'd want to take.
Well, they could do that with Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah,
I know. People. He doesn't look very swift.
You shit on him. You shit on him.
No,
but, he's got punt returner skills and punt returner vision. Right. So that's what you need on an end around.
Yeah, on an end around, Rashard Higgins can't do it. And that seems to be very much what we do with the third wide receiver. That's what we were doing with JoJo Natson, the previous return person. So you may be right. You may be right, Brian. It might be Peoples-Jones who we're going to see on the field for a whole lot more snaps. The Colts will be without left tackle Anthony Costanzo. He has a rib issue, and Darius Leonard groin. So, again, it's not, nobody is really totally healthy in the NFL this year. That's just the way it works. I would go into statistics, but statistics are what everybody is looking at. Well, this is going to be a game that's a lower scoring game. If you look at most of the predictions, they're in the low 20s for each team, rather than the 30-plus points that the Browns have been scoring. And the fact that Phillip Rivers is usually not a guy who is Mr. Big Chunk guy. He's kind of a nibble down the field kind of guy. I see no reason.
He's got another former basketball player playing tight end.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that stats don't matter, but what I am going to say is that the Cleveland Browns and the Indianapolis Colts are, in essence, playing the same game, but with a different set of skills. the Browns are playing a ball control offense, but have more explosive capability because Jarvis Landry downfield, OBJ downfield, and what has been a very productive running game, as opposed to the close to the vest kind of offensive ball that the Colts are playing is much more based and predicated on spreading the ball around, getting rid of the ball out of the pocket quickly so your 39-year-old quarterback isn't exposed for a lack of mobility or to get him hurt. And then it's the other side of the ball where they're going to cut loose on the Browns and really do everything they can to get into the backfield, whereas the Browns are going to be on their heels and playing more of a, prevent, for lack of a better word, a bend but not break defense and try to take the ball away as they have in recent wins. So look at that. The women waving to each other. That's a little secret woman wave. Did you see that? That's the hi, Brittany. Hi, Brittany. See, I took your spot.
Hey, Britt.
I took your spot on Hollywood Squares. I'm in the silent square. Oh, God. So, all the analysis goes down the drain if the Cleveland Browns running game doesn't work. And my belief is that Baker Mayfield is going to have one of his really focused games where he's dangerous, because I don't see the running game opening up the Indianapolis Colts like we've opened up other teams, like the other teams we've played. Don't see that happening. Baker's going to have to get off to a good start, and he's going to have to be dangerous out there, because it's going to be incumbent upon him in stretches of this game to get first downs, to put the ball where it needs to be put, and to analyze what their defense is doing. And it's going to be up to the offensive line to block for him so that he has clear vision to where he's throwing the ball. But I believe that he is going to be forced to throw much more against the Colts than what we've seen in previous weeks. If he doesn't have to, that would be like groovy movies. That would be like about the best thing that you could hope for, because that would mean our running game was working. But if he's been passing somewhere in the vicinity of 30 times a game, I think that you might see him up at about 40 times this game. And I don't like that, but if there's stuff in the run early, you're going to have to see it, because you don't want to keep giving the ball back to Phillip Rivers. It's not that Phillip Rivers, he's kind of like a river, all right? He'll erode you over time just from the tide, just from the current. He usually isn't going to be like giving the ball back to a prolific quarterback, and it's like, here you go, Pat Mahomes, here's the ball like 6 times in a row, and we're punting to you. It isn't like that. But he will put up 27 points on the board against you if you cannot get first downs regularly and keep the game within control. And you're not going to score 27 against that defense, most likely. All right. So injuries, play a huge part in the league. This talk about Rashard Higgins, I don't know what the big deal is at this point. That, to me, that ship has sailed. With Kaderil Hodge on injured reserve, JoJo Natson gone for the year, where does the third wide receiver come from? And, and people are saying, well, geez, I mean, Rashard Higgins, with his chemistry with Baker Mayfield, has to get some brownie points here, because Peoples-Jones just doesn't have any league experience. But I don't really know how he fits into a gadget-oriented fourth wide receiver, all right, kind of scenario. I don't see him being a threat that way. He's a very precise route runner, and he can catch the ball, but he ain't going to beat you deep. And he's kind of like the 2020 version of Brian Brennan, except that he's really maybe a little quicker and a little taller, but not quite as good a pattern runner. I mean, I don't see how he's going to make the eyes of the defense shift. Let's put it that way. And deception is definitely part of what the Cleveland Browns do. Peoples-Jones played 33 snaps last week. He's got more size and can block. And we know that Higgins, no, he doesn't block. So, and that was the reason that Kaderil Hodge, by the way, was getting as much time as he was getting. It wasn't because he was a big threat out of the backfield, but he was doing the little things. And that's what this coach looks for. And I don't see that happening with Rashard Higgins. I don't see him playing because listen to what Van Pelt said. I think this is interesting.
Maybe if Jarvis Landry gets injured, then there's a chance he could play.
Yeah, he may be activated this week. Whether he actually gets into the game, God only knows. Here's what Van Pelt said. Rashard should be possibly up. Now, what the fuck does that mean? That sounds like the two vice presidential candidates refusing to answer a question. We will see how things go toward the end of the week between him and Donovan. Those guys will come in and split time and try to fill that void until Hodge, who's firmly entrenched, comes back. And Higgins, of course, has been inactive the last 2 weeks. And Peoples-Jones is going to be continuing to return kicks. So that's it. They also signed Ryan Switzer to their practice squad. He could become an option if they want to ease the load on Peoples-Jones. Wouldn't that be a real cock-sucking son of a whore? Pardon my French. If Ryan Switzer off the practice squad would leapfrog Rashard Higgins. That would be, whoa! According to data from Sharp Football Stats, the Browns have run just 2 plays in personnel groupings where more than 3 receivers could be on the field.
Oh, thank God for that.
I mean, you just don't see multiple 3 receivers sets.
Yeah, because it worked so well last year, didn't it?
Yeah, well, it's much ado about nothing then. I mean, I don't think that they're not running the sets, so why worry about who they're going to be? The third guy, there's Odell Beckham, and there's Jarvis Landry, and there's the tight ends. That's it. And I wouldn't really say there's much to go on beyond that. The reason in my mind why the Cleveland Browns have actually arrived is because of consistency and identity. Plain and simple, we're seeing with an offensive line, we are a physical football team. You take a look at the guys who make up our offensive line, they all play hurt. Shredder, God only knows. Batonio, God only knows. These guys play with monster injuries. Conklin is another guy who's just out there and just hammering away. And Wyatt Teller, who's the surprise of all, is we're just manhandling people in space. And I think that's the first thing. It's like it all starts with an identity. And
here again, coaching matters.
Yeah, go ahead, Bronk.
I recommend watching the latest Building the Browns episode because you get to see Wyatt Teller, on camera for about 10, 15 minutes on his Zoom talking about, and then they show all these pancake blocks where he just fucking mauls the Dallas Cowboys, making them look like Dallas cow pukes. It's just unbelievable. And, I'm sure they obviously edited out and put his best plays in there and don't show him getting beaten. And it's all
his PFF ranking is so high. I mean, he's not making a lot of mistakes, and he is, and I think the blocking scheme has a lot to do with it. If you tell a guy that, you have to accentuate the talents of the players that you have on the field with the scheme. And this is all part of the consistency. Yes, Whitey Ford died today.
Yeah, he'd
And
have to change his name if he was still alive.
that's
something
true.
more
He
politically correct.
couldn't go there.
He
Couldn't go there. No
say
Whitey Fords. No. Yeah.
It could be like Caucasian Ford or
Peckerhead Ford. Yeah. No, you can't say that. No, can't say it. Yeah. Whitey was actually watching the Yankees when he died.
Well, there you go.
Is that appropriate? He was watching them beating the Tampa Bay Rays. And
how's Dickie V doing? You bump into him at all, or is he?
I haven't bumped into him. I really haven't been hanging out at the tennis club because of all this back trouble and all kinds of stuff that is limiting me. But that would be the place I would see him. And if I do, I'll let you know, though, if I have a Dickie V sighting. But I'll make sure I'll say, "Oh, my baby friend Brock out there in the UK. He really wants to say hi to you there, buddy." But, there's young Dick Vitale, which I do.
And then his eye pops out.
Yeah. And then there's old.
It's just like Bill Masterson doing Dick Vitale. No,
the old Dick Vitale is kind of like, "Yeah, that's why I just want to tell you that because my voice is just kind of, I've been shouting all my life, and it's kind of the way it kind of turned out, So,
he should
oh, baby, I heard."
He should pick a different stick to do, other than just shouting, because obviously it's an act, because you've seen him when he's been a normal person, and not yelling.
You know what would be the best act for Dickie V?
Who?
Mime. Can be interesting for a color commentator. Have nothing to say. Which might
say color anymore either.
So, and while everybody is guessing who's going to die next, and Radu's saying that Lee Corso might be next. Yeah, anybody who survived coaching at Indiana deserves to live. That's got to be tough. You got to really be tough. But
so far over the last couple of days, we've had a musician and now a sports figure. So it's going to be an actor next.
Helen Reddy and Eddie Van Halen.
Eddie Van Halen was just. I didn't realize that he had been suffering from tongue cancer and cancer in general for 20 years since.
You would think Gene Simmons would get tongue cancer, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean,
but he doesn't smoke and he doesn't drink.
Yeah,
so
it was a tongue joke.
Yeah, thank you. It's Eddie Van Halen, gifted guitarist, and I was just really.
And his wife was hot in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Ex-wife.
Yeah.
She's huge now. She put on a lot of weight.
Yeah, she did. Valerie Bertinelli, she was.
Well, she's got a cooking show on
exactly
HGTV or some.
Is Bonnie Franklin still alive? Because if she fell on Bonnie Franklin, she would crush her. Yeah,
I think she's like living one day at a time at the moment.
Okay, thank you. that was just one that I just set up for you, and you took it. Good for you.
Snyder won't be laying any pipe anytime soon, though.
Exactly. Now, Mackenzie Phillips is still alive, isn't she?
She's still alive.
She was like the original Karen, though, wasn't she, Bonnie Franklin, on that show, when you're looking back on it?
Yeah, the hairdo,
the hairdo.
She had that going
the
on.
Attitude and the unlucky love life and the whole thing.
Yeah, the only identity...
Bonnie Franklin died in 2013.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, BCOD must have died.
Pancreatic cancer.
Pancreatic cancer again. Damn, I hate that disease. I hate that fucking disease. But for the Browns' identity, what was the Browns' identity? They were the 0-16 team. I mean, what was the identity of the Browns with Huey Jackson? He's going to go swimming in the lake. I mean, we didn't have one. And even with Freddie Kitchens, it was... we were a surprise predicated on kind of trick gadgetry play calling, but we never really established a firm identity. And here we are now. And on the offensive line, our identity is not only are we physical, but we actually start on the snap count. And we don't give up yardage with ridiculous penalties. And beyond that, there's precision to this. Also, there is an idea.
Best of all, when a play is actually not being blocked or not being taken care of by the defense, they keep running it until they do.
The other thing that I really like
better play calling
is it's Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield. Everybody, including Baker, wanted Baker to be like
Baker.
Yeah, the guy who just, without a conscience, like Brett Favre, gunned the ball down the field. But that isn't the best utilization of a guy who's short, and you got to sprint him out some. You gotta roll him out some. He throws well on the move. You got to give him short options where he's not just gazing down the field for long periods of time. You give him something that mentally he can get his head around rather than drawing plays in the dirt with a stick. You're getting a lot more mileage out of Baker Mayfield. And, I think we all started out thinking, oh, man, he is going to be like the next coming of Daryl LaMonica, throwing bombs all over the field. But it isn't that way. I think that Baker Mayfield needs to settle down emotionally and become a leader. And it's proven over and over again. And I think the Troy Aikman comparison that was made in the last program on Monday was an apt one. Nobody has anything bad to say about Troy Aikman because he's got his rings, and no one man can do it by himself. And if you're really looking for that kind of a game, get a video game, but don't ask your NFL team for your starting quarterback who's slow of foot and short to stand in the pocket as long as he can and heave it. That's not a game plan.
As somebody who had to sit in the stands and watch them beat the shit out of the Cardinals at Sun Devil Stadium, the Cowboys always came in and were a run-first team. They always featured Emmitt Smith more than they featured the passing game. So, then everything was predicated off of that success.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's not that Michael Irvin, he certainly had plenty of opportunities to do things, but it was set up. It was set up because you had to pay attention to the other things that were going on. And this is what we've been able to do. The only thing that we haven't really established is passing the ball to our running backs. It's more of a tight end kind of deal.
Well, they're staying in and blocking longer.
They're staying in and blocking. That's right.
Yeah, they're keeping Baker alive. That one miraculous catch that Hunt had where he was falling backwards and grabbed the ball with his left hand from behind his back.
We know that Kareem Hunt is going to block, okay? Dearness Johnson, I don't know. The physicality of, and Nick Chubb's willing to block, but that doesn't matter now. I
think if Johnson is allowed to be on the field, he's going to do whatever the fuck they tell him to do because he doesn't want to go back to he doesn't want to go back to being on a fucking fishing boat. So
outside of Delacroix,
this is a hell of a question, Titosh. How many defensive linemen do the Browns have to rotate in and out to manage the fatigue?
And a total of 8.
Yeah, well, what you need is to hold on to the ball for longer periods of time. The Cleveland Browns went so conservative, they kept giving the ball back to the Cowboys, and anyone would be fatigued.
A big play in that game Sunday was when we had that 2-point conversion where we covered the ball, and then they spent like 10 minutes reviewing it. Well, that time that play was being reviewed, the defense was getting a rest, which it wouldn't otherwise would have had. So whether we would have still managed that interception at the end of the game without that 10-minute break for reviewing that play, I don't know. But yeah, they were totally gassed.
Yeah, we're getting some really good comments here, and
usual, isn't it?
At some point, Baker Mayfield is going to be called upon to actually win a football game rather than manage a football game. And that is when a guy becomes his most dangerous, is when he knows that he's got 2 minutes and he's got to get the ball down the field when it counts. And it's not happening with the running game. And he's got to find the open receiver in the scheme where it falls on his shoulders. And Do I feel like he's there yet? No. Do I think he can be that person? I think only time tells. But it just, look, you look at the Browns and it's like, okay, they're 3-1 and they're a surprise. That's great. But it's no surprise how we're doing it. We're running the football. You take that away from the Cleveland Browns and you're going to have a big problem on your hands. And I believe this week, you're going to see more fall on the shoulders of Baker Mayfield. And he's either going to make wise decisions or he's not. And every scheme, and if there are people not open, he'll just have to throw the ball away. The problem with that, as we know, is gets you 3 and outs, and it gets your defense fatigued. And Phillip Rivers is exactly the kind of quarterback, quick drop and get rid of the ball and fast release, and your defensive line gets tired because you never get to him, but you continue. And they're gonna run a hurry up. I have no doubt. that that's going to be the plan. So until we've proven that we can stop that, people are going to run it at us. So the answer to your question, T-Tosh, how many? I mean, you don't want to take Myles Garrett off the field for multiple plays, but he seems to be the one who gets the most out of breath most consistently because he's putting out maximal effort to get to the quarterback and to get around the corners. I mean, he does that move where he bends himself and gets around. It's kind of like Curse, what the Freak used to do. He bends his body in certain ways, but there isn't a lot of inside pass rush by him. So he's running a lot of mileage in the average game. The reason you see Garrett is so tired out there is because he's outside rushing, getting around his man, and he's going for strip sacks. And that there's so much burst involved with that. And he's actually running by looping around further distances.
And his back, I mean, my back hurts just watching him play. He's like twisting it to get around the guys.
So it isn't just how many men, it's that you can't afford to take your best pass rusher off the field. He's going to be fatigued at points. It's the inside guys. And with Ogunjobi hurt and Elliott filling in, that's going to be something you want to look at, because if the Colts have a running game against us, we really got problems. And Ogunjobi is stout in the sense that he takes up a lot of space. And it's not that he's crashing into the backfield like Michael Dean Perry, but he is standing his man up at the line, and they're stacking up a lot. And, there aren't as many creases, as far as our defense against the run. But it's going to require it's going to be those, not the pass rushers, it's the 2 inside guys who are going to have to be replaced quite a bit, because I have a feeling the Colts are going to try to control the ball and be on the field for a long period of time. But you can't get them in and out of the game if you don't stop them. I mean, the hurry up offense is predicated on exhausting the opponent because the defense can't get them 3 and out. When you get a 3rd down, you got to get them off the field. Or else you ought to blow your timeouts, in a non-offensive way to try to spell people because your defense can't stop somebody. So that's these are all potential problems. And again, that is correct. Offensive linemen lead. It was like Kareem Hunt said, I love running downhill behind these guys. That's what it is. The offensive linemen know where they're going. The defensive linemen have to adjust, and it requires a hell of a lot of energy to do it. Offensive line, technique. Strength, yes, but blocking technique is just, turning your man, creating those holes that running backs run through. It's going to be a challenge for the Browns defensive line. Oh, have fun walking the dog, Rocks.
Thank you.
I'll give my best to Topaz.
Will do.
There's a whole back row to myself now.
Yeah, there. Yeah. You look at that. Look at that. You're highlighted.
See, there's you. There's Brian.
Yeah,
on YouTube, Bronk is on the bottom.
I'm on the bottom. Yeah.
We're right at the point of the show where we're going to pick this game, and we'll start with Bronk. Bronk, you're usually pretty good at these picks. So's Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for the compliment. I'm going back and forth on this one. If you'd asked me last Sunday, I would definitely have said the Colts are going to win. Now I'm starting to get into the Browns propaganda, and I watched the building of the Browns, and I'm thinking, well, maybe we got a chance. But we still don't have Nick Chubb. So we got to run the ball. I think we're going to lose 19-16 overtime.
19-16, a loss.
Overtime, yeah.
All right.
It's going to
write
be
that down, Brian.
Grinding kind of.
Yeah, like most people are saying. Brian, what do you think?
I'm going to pick the Browns 23-16. Yeah. I think it's going to be a fourth quarter touchdown that wins the game.
Could be an overtime 22-16. It would be.
Well, for me, I'm going with the Browns 24-20. We're not straying from the same formula here, folks. This game, believe me, if the Colts score more than 24 points in this game, the Browns aren't going to win. I mean, that is the problem that we face, is that our defense has to, if he wants to dink and dunk, Phillip Rivers, you go ahead and let him and try to get him off the field, and let him kick field goals. We have a really remarkable.
That's how the Bears won last night.
In the red zone. Our offense is accomplished this year at getting into the end zone and not settling for field goals. Ricky Parkey has not been the name you hear being called, except kicking off.
Cody Parkey.
If there's going to be a blowout in this game, it's not going to be the Browns blowing out the Colts. So if we get behind, where we're like 2 touchdowns down going into the third quarter, and Baker's just got to light it up, we're going to be fucked. It's going to get really bad. So it's either going to be Colts win in overtime or Colts win a blowout.
Yeah, my feeling, again, is that the Browns deserve respect at this point. Brittany has picked the Colts, she thinks.
I think a loss would do us good at this junction from a learning perspective. We're not going to ever win this division this year. But, I think this week will be a learning moment for the coaching staff and the team.
Well, it's interesting. They have playoff probability, and it's predicated not on reality, of course. It's the toughness of schedule. The rest of the season, the Browns have the second easiest schedule in the NFL.
That's what it looks like right now. But,
That's what it looks like now. But all I'm saying is 70% chance, they're saying, a 70.7% chance that the Browns make the playoffs as it sits right now at 3-1, and with the schedule they have yet to play. A lot of things can change. But that's the reason why it's a learning experience in more ways. It's, can you meet and match expectations? Can you go out on the field and play like a team that has a 70% chance of making the playoffs? I mean, that's what it comes down to. And not relying on the ease of schedule. But, first of all, the Bengals are not going to be as easy as they were the first time.
No. That's going to be a hard game.
That's going to be a lot tougher. And we haven't even done the Steelers, and God help us. Our record against the Steelers has not been very good.
We can't get anybody hurt this week. At least they're playing a game this week where they didn't last week, but we can't get anybody hurt going into the Steelers week. If we lose any more key players, then the season is in pretty much jeopardy. I mean, we're at one of those stages where we could win every single game we play and go 15-1, or we could lose every fucking single game we play and go 3-13. Depending if something really catastrophic happens the next 2 weeks or not. So
I mean, Jovan, if there was one, and how you would get him up to speed.
My horse.
At this point, you're going to run with the horses you got. Yeah. That's what we know at this point. The thing that got me about Roethlisberger, he said, we got the short end of the stick with this whole pandemic thing. And it's like, wow, how many times have you gotten the long end of the stick, you stupid ass?
I got a stick for him right here.
And he's damn lucky he didn't get arrested by harassing that woman that Donald Trump went out with. Trump introduced him to a woman. And if you remember the story, a drunken Ben Roethlisberger badgered her outside of her hotel room, trying to get into her room and trying to get it on with her. And that is beside the incident in the men's room. He's gotten the long end of the stick his whole fucking life. Fuck Ben, fuck the Steelers. I got absolutely no good vibes, nothing good to say about him. Mike Tomlin, nothing good to say about him. Mason Randolph, nothing good to say about him. Nothing good to say about that football team. Got nothing bad to say about their fans. Their fans, the Steelers win, and hey, it's great to be cheering on a winner. I got nothing good to say with who's running that ship. Nothing at all. And now we're going to do the this may be, nobody's going to trade injury-prone Njoku. And I'm not sure you want Earl Thomas. You've just settled OBJ down. God only knows Earl Thomas will start fights within his own organization. I mean, you can sit there and say, oh, we can use this guy and that guy, but you're going to have to play who you got at this point. You're knee-deep in the muddy. And, oh, there's a good reference. Who's saying that?
What?
When the
deep in the muddy.
I'd
have to look it up.
Yeah, we don't have rocks to.
I have to look it up. Anyway, speaking of muddy, there's a massive, great storm heading right into Louisiana right now, going to go up the Mississippi River. So I don't know whether that's going to affect any games this weekend, but it's headed straight for South Carolina. I was looking at the NOAA, and they were saying 4 to 6 inches in that little corner of South Carolina that you know so well.
Oh, wow. That's not good. Well, women will be happy if it's more than 4 to 6 inches. But
4 to 6 inches.
Yeah. Yes, Earl Thomas is a harmony issue. Earl Thomas is got the kind of rage and anger that James Harrison would have. You don't want this. Believe me, you just don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And David Njoku has no trade value, and he's not even going to be able to break through Harrison Bryant and Hooper at the top of the tight end.
That's another wasted first round pick that we've had. We've had too many of them.
I wanted to talk about a few other things. I had said something, and it looked like I was going to be eating my words, that I didn't feel great about this Tom Brady thing going to Tampa. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to say that it's his fault, because it's not. I'm not going to tell you he's the savior of mankind, because he's not. When you play in a system, and this system is completely different. Bruce Arians' system is completely different than what Belichick ran and his people ran in New England. And he's been forced to make adjustments that have resulted in 2 pick sixes this year. But more significantly, he doesn't have the luxury of a team that makes no mistakes. The New England Patriots are, again, the least penalized team in the NFL. And they just don't cut their own throats. Tampa, on the other hand, makes mistakes. There's a lot of false starts. There's a lot of holds. There's a lot of things. You don't want to put an old quarterback into a situation of long passing situations. And watching Nick Foles beat him a second time, in essence, and watching Brady refuse to shake his hand or congratulate him a second time at midfield after the game, and watching Brady having his little shit fit on the sidelines. I don't know if you caught that, of him screaming at the coaches and screaming at people. This is a guy who is playing for a legacy And it ain't easy. It ain't easy for anybody coming into a new system, let alone a guy who's only played in one basically his entire career. But
honestly, it kind of reminded me of Michael Jordan when he went to the Bullets and decided to put on the uniform to try and be a player coach. And he would have those kind of episodes in the huddles.
Yeah, and you're right, Brian. It was Pete Seeger. And it was the thing that got bounced off of CBS Network on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. It was Pete Seeger singing, I was wrong on the title, Waist Deep in the Big Money, which was an anti-war anthem predicated on our presence in Vietnam.
Yeah, you can't have a socialist on network TV in the 60s either. So.
Right. And so the network blacked that out big time. They wouldn't show that episode. So I thought that was, but yeah, waist deep in the muddy. Yeah, at this point, that's our secondary. We are waist deep in the big muddy. And there ain't no heading back. There ain't no going back. But the whole Tom Brady issue, it makes for good press. They're 3-2. The goddamn Bears are 4-1, but if you can't beat the Bears, if anyone was thinking that New England might be on that borderline of being one of those elite teams, guess again. The Bears beat them with smoke and mirrors, for God's sakes. They were held down to a point total that, in essence, 19 points, which isn't going to beat a lot of people, and the Bears were only good enough to score one more, is what it really boils down to. So I just watching that happen, because it's only 45 minutes up the road from me. And, all the hopes and expectations because of one man, that Tampa Bay fans are a little bit out of their gourd. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, it doesn't work that way in football. It takes more than that. And he's not getting a great deal of help around him like he's used to getting. And this is true. I mean, the pressure is on because the spotlight is on him, and the excellence that he would demand by being in the persnickety Bill Belichick system, and it isn't there under Bruce Arians. We had Bruce Arians as our offensive coordinator in Cleveland, and people are not being held to the same standard in Tampa Bay as they are in New England, and it's got to be frustrating. The Bears got them all right, Bronk, and that shouldn't have happened. That should have been a surefire win to take them to 4-1. But at 3-2 now, they're in the vast middle. And make no mistake, it's not like they have prolific wide receivers. They don't have prolific running backs. This is not a team that is outstanding in its personnel, and it's not exemplary in the length of duration of time of the scheme. It is basically no different than we are. That's how I see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, and I'm not going to get too much into talking about Sendejo looking lost. He's 33 years old and he's slow. That's what I would tell you. And if he so much as guesses instinctively wrong, he's a straight line player. He's a hard hitter, but he does not play space well.
Well, he seems to be fair, he seems to understand the defense better than that guy we called the Ghost and Real Preppers and some of the other idiots we've had back there in recent years. He seems to at least know where he should be. But whether he gets there or not is another matter.
And, another interesting thing, Jets players and coaches sent home after the positive COVID test. I mean,
so that'd be the best thing to happen to them.
Yeah, well, yeah, they might get better. The Jets at 0-4 scheduled to host the Cardinals, and of course, Darnold is injured, which might also be about the best thing that could happen to them. I don't know, but this is becoming more and more of a factor as COVID starts to find its way into the NFL. And there's a lot of talk about coaches cannot yell at officials without having their masks on. I think a lot of teams are starting to feel the heat of this. So, Tyron Smith of the Cowboys, their left tackle, gone now, neck injury, gone for the season,
That's crap, because we need the Cowboys to play the other teams in our division tough. We don't want them to be rolled over.
Yeah, I mean, but this just goes on and on. Injuries are going to shape what the outcomes are as far as the playoffs are concerned. Lamar Jackson returned to practice, but he was not 100%, although he says he is now. He was held out Wednesday with a knee injury and then missed Thursday with a stomach illness that forced him to go home. What that knee injury is, I'm not exactly sure. He was not wearing a brace or a wrap on either knee, and he practiced free and easy. All right. But he was listed as questionable, and you don't want to hear knee in association with Lamar Jackson. Well, I mean, and
he did
Jackson,
practice. He did practice today.
Oh, he was fine. He was fine. They said he did everything he was supposed to do. He's 3-0 against the Bengals as a starter, completing 71% of his passes, throwing 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. And he's run for 336 yards against Cincinnati, and that's his most against any team. The poor Bengals are really going to be up against it.
But I think they'll make it a good game. I think the Bengals will play well against the Ravens. I think they'll
I don't see how their defense isn't going to be able to keep up. I mean, my goodness, the way we ran through them. Can you imagine Lamar Jackson just getting a little hole to go through? My goodness. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is this weird shit going on for the Washington football team. Ron Rivera's quote, "I haven't given up on Dwayne Haskins. They've benched him."
Are you saying Ron Rivera's a cancer on the team?
Thank you so much for that.
Would that be a melanoma, Brian?
Melanoma, yeah.
Well, they benched him in favor of the Kyle Allen. And the thing is that Haskins has been demoted to the number 3 quarterback behind Alex Smith.
Smith?
This Alex Pegleg Smith. The guy's a peg leg. Alex Smith can't play. He can't play in the league. I don't know if you've seen him walk. He looks like he's got a peg leg.
Wow. He should be on Tampa Bay then.
Yeah.
Or the Raiders. Or the Raiders.
Raiders, yeah.
Yeah. But you see, the thing that really is damaging about this is that September 28th, Ron Rivera sat down with Dwayne Haskins and said to him, you gotta up your game, man. I mean, if you want to stay at the helm. He probably went out and threw for 314 yards against the Ravens. He did not throw an interception, and he completed almost 66% of his passes. So I don't understand. And immediately after that loss, which everybody knew that Washington was going to lose to the Ravens, they bench him. But then the very next practice after they benched him, they didn't even give him any reps. They said, fuck you. You're not getting any reps. And so it was all suddenly Alex Smith and then Kyle Allen was getting the predominant number of them, and all the 2 reps were going to Alex Smith. It's like, what did this guy do?
Supposedly it's study and practice habits, or a lack thereof.
Well, then come out and say it, man. Then come out and say what the deal is. It's crazy. I mean, the one thing that we have seen from Haskins, he gets down on himself, and I think that that's a sign of frustration in a young guy. He may not be the most mature young guy. He did throw for the 314 yards in week 4, but he had the NFL's second lowest QBR at 31.5. He ranked last in the league in completion percentage on throws that traveled 5 air yards or more, 43.6%, which just isn't going to get you anything. I can understand why you might want to sit a young quarterback down. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think that Dwayne Haskins is the answer to the problems of the Washington football team. And when we played them and when we beat them, and leading into the game, I told you, you want him to throw a lot. And they said, well, you know, he hasn't thrown a pick this year. And I said, just wait around for a while. You know, it's like what they say here in Florida. You know, if you don't like the weather, 10 minutes, you know, that's the way the wind blew.
Your umbrella, kids.
Dwayne Haskins, and he coughed the ball up against the Browns and really went according to his reputation.
I think the other part of the benching has to do with the record. And Dan Snyder is probably not going to be the most patient guy when it comes to.
Good evening, T-Tosh. Good contributions today. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
When it comes to, you know, stinking up the field.
Well, I mean, you know, Washington's got a bad reputation in general because, you know, and I don't know, Ron Rivera's running interference for Daniel Snyder, who may have told him, you got to sit this kid, and I want him demoted. The thing I don't understand is you don't take somebody unless they broke disciplinary, and then I would understand. If you want to sit down in front of the press and say, you know, well, that's between the player and me, and then you know you had something that was, you know, instead, you know, sitting there and saying, well, I haven't given up on him, and then demoting him, it's pretty humiliating. And you're demoting him behind a guy who really shouldn't be playing football anymore with a bad leg. That is not real good.
Well, there were people that suggested that Rivera should be coaching the Browns. It's a good thing we got Stefanski because
I never cared for Ron Rivera only because he.
Ron Rivera was in the same boat as Mike McCarthy, as far
exactly. Yeah, they were all.
And it's really funny.
Boat out into the middle of the lake and let it sink.
Well, it's just like Romeo Crennel's back, you know, at the helm in Houston, and you know, it's all the same. It's all the same thing. Ron Rivera is Romeo Crennel. They're defensive coordinators, really, and they never take advantage of any great offensive situation because they tend to be defense first kind of guys. The reasoning was that Kyle Allen spent 2 years in Carolina with Rivera. There you go. And the current Washington offensive coordinator, Scott Turner. But because of a lack of a preseason, there was no quarterback competition. They went into the whole thing full bore behind Haskins. And then this comment from Rivera, there are things Dwayne was still learning to do that Kyle knows in terms of communicating with the offensive line. Well, then why wasn't Kyle Allen starting to begin the season?
Or why not teach Haskins how to do it properly? You know?
Well, I mean, because maybe there wasn't time because of the season. That if you got a guy who worked in the system previously, you know what it's like. It's like drafting Bernie Kosar and you're waiting, but Gary Danielson knows the NFL and Bernie Kosar does not. And so you watch, you know, from the sidelines until it's your turn to come in. And that's what happened with Kosar. And the same thing with Haskins. He was far from lights out last year, God only knows. And if they brought in a quarterback to have a competition like they're saying, and that guy actually ran the system that they're actively running right now, and without a preseason, and we're going onto the field for the first time, then that's a situation that's guaranteed to make Haskins fail.
Correct.
I mean, any way you look at it, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. So, you know, I just wanted to end the show on that note because there are things that happen in the NFL that you wonder how it is that they happen, how they get started. This was one of them, and I think it's really lousy. I think it's a really shitty thing. And
I would also like to see the league stop capitulating to the fucking Tennessee Titans and make them either play or forfeit.
Yeah, you know, this is a problem.
Now we have a weekend that goes for not only Sunday and Monday, but now Tuesday.
Wow.
Oh, well,
and they're going to screw the Bills for their next. I think it's they play on the following Sunday.
Wow. Short week.
All right, I got to get out of here. Everybody, we're all picking the Browns to win. Let's hope that it happens. And we'll be with you at halftime and postgame. Remember, 4:25 start time. So if you're planning your night around this horrible program, the halftime show will probably air sometime in the vicinity of 6 o'clock, and the postgame show probably somewhere in the vicinity of 7:30, if all goes according to plan. So we will be there for you in any event at halftime and after the game. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Go Browns. Let's get it done. And until Sunday, hasta la vista, Pasture Heads. Good night.